Chapter 12. Walt Whitman, The Artificial Man. Walt Whitman, 1819 to 1892, was, like Nietzsche, an Emersonian, and like Nietzsche, he openly developed the implications of Ralph Waldo Emerson, 1803 to 1882, to their logical conclusions. Emerson, one of America's most subversive writers, wrote deceptively, as a prophet of the good American life, so that his appeal was to men as diverse as Nietzsche on the one hand and Robert Welch, founder of the John Birch Society, on the other. Walt, originally Walter Whitman, was an urban man, mainly associated with printing and journalism before he assumed the mantle of America's prophet, the prophet of democracy and the voice of cosmic consciousness. Richard Maurice Buck, in Cosmic Consciousness, saw Walt Whitman as, quote, the best, most perfect example the world has had so far of the cosmic sense. End quote. Whitman was a self-manufactured man. As Esther Shepherd demonstrated, Whitman patterned himself after fictional concepts of the untutored natural prophet who spouts pure poetry and truth, an idea derived from George Sand's novels and from others. When Shepherd's book was published, I was a university student. I asked a professor about it and was told that the book was meaningless and irrelevant. Only later did it occur to me that both the professor and Whitman were homosexuals and had a common stake in pretension. The only honest note in Whitman's writings was the homosexual one, and he avoided probings on that. As the prophet of full democracy, Whitman could not allow for distinctions and moral judgments, and his poems are a long praise of the total acceptance of everything except Christianity. His poems do poorly as poetry. They are read as a substitute Bible, and some were set to solemn, hymn-like music. Whitman wanted a liberty for all things and practices which are non-Christian. He insisted that the true meaning of democracy in America is the liberation from morality. His long poem, Walt Whitman, is an egocentric celebration of his prophetic quote-unquote calling. He went so far as to have a photograph taken of himself as Christ, quote, the Christ picture, end quote. His poem, Walt Whitman, also celebrates pantheism, of which he is the prophet and voice. Quote, I celebrate myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. End quote. Whitman insisted on the goodness of all things. Quote, clear and sweet is my soul, and clear and sweet is all that is not my soul. End quote. The equality of everything was assured together with faith in himself. Quote, I believe in you, my soul. The other I am must not abase itself to you, and you must not be abased to the other. End quote. Whitman asserted the radical equality of all things. We are lucky to live and, quote, just as lucky to die, end quote. No moral judgments can stand, nor biological ones. All things are equally valid in a pantheistic universe. He declared himself to be, quote, the caresser of life, end quote, but he was, in terms of his premises, also the caresser of murder, rape, and death. All are equal to him, the deacon, the farm boy, and the prostitute. In fact, in 1860 he wrote, quote, to a common prostitute, end quote, quote, be composed, be at ease with me. I am Walt Whitman, liberal and lusty as nature. Not till the sun excludes you do I exclude you. Not till the waters refuse to glisten for you and the leaves to rustle for you do my words refuse to glisten and rustle for you. My girl, I appoint you with an appointment, and I charge you that you make preparation to be worthy to meet me, and I charge you that you be patient and perfect till I come. Till then, I salute you with a significant look that you do not forget me." End quote. Prophet Whitman saw himself as an elemental force, as a kind of incarnation of nature. Normally not given to distinctions, he here demands that the girl, quote, "make preparation to be worthy to meet me," end quote. And what could that be? Our nature prophet does not say. Whitman addresses Jesus Christ as a, quote, "dear brother," end quote, in, quote, "to him that was crucified," end quote, and as one whom Whitman understood, although Jesus' followers did not. He declared Jesus to be like himself, above all choosing of sides and beyond all insistence on moral judgments. Quote, "I specify you with joy, O my comrade, to salute you and to salute those who are with you before and since, and those to come also, that we all labour together, transmitting the same charge and succession, we few, equals, indifferent of lands, indifferent of times, we, encloser of all continents, all castes, allowers of all theologies, compassionates, perceivers, rapport of men, we walk silent among disputes and assertions, but reject not the disputers nor anything that is asserted. We hear the bawling and din, we are reached by divisions, jealousies, recriminations on every side. They close peremptorily upon us to surround us, my comrade. Yet we walk unheld, free, the whole earth over, journeying up and down till we make our ineffaceable mark upon time and the diverse eras, till we saturate time and eras, that the men and women of races, ages to come, may prove brethren and lovers as we are." End quote. The falsity and idiocy of this is readily apparent. Whitman asserts his equality with Christ and sees Christ as rejecting all theologies and moral divisions. All men are to be, according to this common faith, quote, "brethren and lovers as we are," end quote, which to Whitman meant fellow homosexuals. Whitman passed as a poet, but was closer to being a self-made madman. He was his own ultimate force. Quote, "Why should I pray? Why should I venerate and be ceremonious? Having pried through the strata, analysed to a hair, counselled with doctors and calculated close, I find no sweeter fat than sticks to my own bones. In all people I see myself, none more, and not one a barleycorn less. And the good or bad I say of myself, I say of them." End quote. He saw himself as the voice of the cosmos, the voice of all peoples and all things, the voice of slaves, prostitutes or criminals, of, quote, "forbidden voices," end quote, and of everything. Quote, "Divine I am, inside and out, and I make holy whatever I touch or am touched from. The scent of these armpits, aroma finer than prayer, this head more than churches, Bibles and all the creeds. If I worship one thing more than another, it shall be the spread of my own body or any part of it. Translucent mould of me, it shall be you. Shaded ledges and rests, it shall be you. Firm, masculine coulter, it shall be you." End quote. A coulter is a plough or knife, and it was once used to refer to the penis, and Whitman tells us he worshipped his sexuality, and he found the smell of his armpits finer than prayer, Bibles and creeds, and why not, if he was indeed divine and holy? He did add, quote, "Oh, I am wonderful," end quote. He is every man, but he is more. All are equal in this pantheistic universe of Walt Whitman, but he is their incarnate voice. In section 43 of Walt Whitman, he tells the priests he does not despise them. He, quote, "accepts," end quote, Jesus on his, Whitman's terms. He, the voice of all, offers his benediction to all. In 46, he speaks to his quote-unquote spirit, capitalized like the Holy Spirit. In 48 he declares, quote, "Nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is." End quote. Like Sade, Whitman wanted to abolish all moral law and distinctions. Unlike Sade, he held that the world beyond good and evil is somehow wonderful and holy. In his poem, To Think of Time, 1855, Whitman saw all things as beneficent. Quote, "What will be well, for what is well. To take interest is well, and not to take interest shall be well." End quote. In Whitman's thinking, the world was beyond biblical good and evil, and therefore in a blissful nirvana. Such thinking came from Emerson. Carlyle disliked it in his friend Emerson. According to Joseph Slater, quote, "In spite of a genuine distaste which became shock and moral indignation when they heard Emerson assert that even in a brothel, man, quote, is on his way to all that is great and good, end quote, the Carlyles continued to attend his lectures." End quote. Sade's successors wanted God abolished and universal bliss to prevail. They wanted a lawless world to be seen as holy. Sade would perhaps have been both amused and appalled at the naive nature of such people. If God goes, what remains? The world and the mind of man are his creation. In I Sing the Body Electric, 1895, Whitman rhapsodizes on the body as, quote, "sacred," end quote. He borrows a term from religion, trying to retain some meaning even as he rejects the origin. He can only burble because, having destroyed definition and demarcation, he has no criterion by which he can define anything. End quote. Great are the myths. 1855, he reduces the Bible to myth, declares to be great youth and old age, the earth, language, justice and life and more. But his pantheism and his equalization of all things makes his praise empty. Because he hails all things as equally valid, what difference does anything make? His concept of democracy negates all meaning. In This Compost, 1856, Whitman celebrated the fact that all things die and rot to provide compost for what comes next. Is this any ground for meaning and joy that all things become fertilizer? Is this a ground for comfort and joy? Whitman's unending gush is no substitute for meaning. His frequent wide generalizations give us little content. In A Woman Waits for Me, 1856, Whitman wrote, quote, "Sex contains all bodies, souls, meanings, proofs, purities, delicacies, results, promulgations, songs, commands, health, pride, the maternal mystery, the seminal milk, all hopes, benefactions, bestowals, all the passions, loves, beauties, delights of the earth, all the governments, judges, gods, followed persons of the earth. These are all contained in sex as parts of itself and justifications of itself. Without shame, the man I like knows and avows the deliciousness of his sex. Without shame, the woman I like knows and avows hers." End quote. This childish spouting says little. It is pseudo-profound and inane. In what sense are all things, including governments and the world order, contained in sex as parts of itself and justifications of itself? Do we know the world better by reducing it to sex, atoms, humours, or anything else? In Réponde, 1856, Whitman called for the transvaluation of all standards. Quote, "Let us all, without missing one, be exposed in public, naked, monthly at the peril of our lives. Let our bodies be freely handled and examined by whoever chooses. Let nothing but copies at second hand be permitted to exist upon the earth. Let the earth desert God, nor let there ever henceforth be mentioned the name of God. Let there be no God. End quote. Whitman was very prone to homosexual daydreams. He equated a surplus of words with poetry and profundity. He claimed, quote, I project the history of the future, end quote. End quote. We too, how long we were fooled. 1860. Whitman expressed his usual self-identification with nature, with plants, roots, grass, fish, hawks, with everything. This identification was assumed to have a mystical harmony and joy. For Whitman, death and life were equal, as were all things else. In Native Moments, 1860, he insisted that he loved low persons, prostitutes and shunned persons. He compared himself to Adam walking naked early in the morning, and he invited others to touch and handle his, quote, body, end quote. He was, in his eyes, an unfallen new Adam, here to save the world with his gospel. He instructed, quote, recorders ages hence, end quote, on how to view him. A very flattering self-description of a, quote-unquote, prophet of love. In 1865, in, quote, Chanting the Square Deific, end quote, Whitman acted as the voice of all things, Jehovah and Satan, Brahma, Saturn, the Holy Spirit, and, quote, the general soul, end quote. The marriage of God and Satan is basic to the modern temper because such a union reduces God from absolute ultimacy to being a facet of the totality, quote, the general soul, end quote. This reduces morality in the biblical sense to no more than one lifestyle among many, no more true or false than any other faith. The homosexual way of life is then as valid as any. The criminal is as good as the saint, and the whore is as good as the virgin. In fact, if the sodomite, the criminal, and the whore insist on the validity of their way, they then represent a higher awareness of, quote, reality, end quote. Hence, Whitman's song was himself with all his vices. With the passing years, Whitman's verse became very repetitious. After all, pantheism allows for little else. His words became pathetic, as witness The Singer in the Prison, 1868. In A Clear Midnight, 1881, he echoes his old separation from books and scholarship and his, quote, free flight into the wordless, end quote. His pantheistic pseudo-mysticism required a flight from knowledge and meaning into gush and ecstasy over a cosmic and undifferentiated blob or mess. Because men found a cosmic meaning hard to live with, because it means law and judgment, responsibility and accountability, men found Whitman great because they wanted to join him in escaping from meaning. Whitman had his imitators in abundance. In England, Edward Carpenter, 1844 to 1929, an ex-clergyman in the Church of England, in Towards Democracy, gave to those who loved a non-judgmental, homoerotic view of the world as much gush as Whitman did, and in the same manner. Carpenter also saw himself as a prophet, a humanistic messiah. In I Am a Voice, we are told, quote, I am a voice singing the song of deliverance, centuries long, floating aloft in ecstasy. Surprised at myself, to find myself looking out on this landscape here, to be engaged on these occupations and plans which people call mine, but which are not mine at all. To be living in this house, which is nothing to me whether I live in it or not, to be fretting myself with these anxieties and cares, to be this limited and foolish mortal that I am. Yet again at intervals soaring aloft, going back again to my home in the sky, to sing for all time the song of joy, of deliverance. End quote. An imitator like Carpenter was no small curse on Whitman. But what of the churches? Where have they stood on Whitman and his radical democracy, on the equality of good and evil, God and Satan? Mostly they have been silent. This has perhaps been preferable to their speaking. Thus, in the February 16th, 1953 issue of Monday Morning, a magazine for the clergy of the Presbyterian Church, New York, a review of Arthur E. Briggs' book, Walt Whitman, Thinker and Artist, appeared. The review in full said, quote, I thoroughly agree with the author that Whitman's poetical gifts continued throughout his life, in contrast with some who contend that his genius declined before the Civil War. Personally, I have always been rather reluctant to psychoanalyze Whitman. I would rather accept him as the good grey poet. Had I been a contemporary of Whitman, no doubt I would have been as shocked by his barbaric yawp, his blatant egoism, and his offensive obscenities. However, he came to me full-orbed years after his death, and I appreciate his poetic gifts. He undoubtedly was the 19th century prophet of the common man. I've always loved him for the golden haze of mysticism which pervades much of his poetry. I have admired him for his Homeric gift of choosing the right word or phrase. I have been captured by his serenity. I cannot agree with the author in classifying Whitman as, quote, an ethical humanist, end quote. His belief in the personality of God and the immortality of the soul surely places him, quote, on the side of the angels, end quote. This is particularly true of his poems written after 1870. However, I am greatly indebted to the author for the many fine tributes which he gives to Whitman, end quote. No doubt such a pastor would have found redeeming qualities in the Marquis de Sade. His opinion to the contrary, Whitman was not an ethical humanist, but simply a humanist who affirmed the radical equality of all things. Whitman and Dewey would appreciate the United States of the 1990s with its moral relativism and its equalitarian democratic goals. In the world of the 1990s, equality is clearly affirmed. A father, about to spend a fortune educating his college-bound son, rather diffidently urged him to moral behaviour. The son asked him, saying, Dad, you have your standards, and I have mine. I respect your codes, and you should respect mine. End quote. Democratic moral relativism is prevalent. A close friend called me yesterday. A playmate of his 5-year-old daughter decided she wanted to eat, and she demanded that her host family feed her. It wasn't dinner time yet. Another playmate, a boy, decided against going home when his father called. Instead of being ordered home, the father spent 20 minutes persuading the boy home would be best. This is equalitarianism and democracy. Everyone's will is good as anyone's. Or take the argument against Orthodox Christianity by some homosexuals. They saw it as evil because it declared homosexuality and other practices to be sin, to be morally wrong. This was a violation of democracy. More can be said, but the problem should be obvious by now. Edward Carpenter titled one poem, Lo, What a World I Create, and he said he was creating it for, quote, my own, my lovers. Indeed, Carpenter and Whitman were creating a world for their lovers, and there would be no room in it for others. Whitman was an artificial man, a fabrication of his own making. In his later years, he tried to claim that he had indeed been very much involved with women, rather unconvincingly so. He had created a mythical Walt Whitman, and as an old man, Walter had trouble vindicating him. Very little about Whitman rang true. W.A. Orton said of Whitman, quote, his, Whitman's, sensuality repels because it is not sensual enough. It is too impersonal, too cerebral, too much a part of his thin, conceptual universe. End quote. Like his blousy heartiness, all things about Whitman, other than his homosexuality, rang false. They were artificial, manufactured aspects of a prophetic pose. Whitman is well regarded wherever artificial man exists, and his fame will perish as synthetic facades collapse and artificial men receive the bored indifference they deserve.